Denial. 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 It ain't just a river in Egypt, guys. See you in a minute. First, let's define DID. It's been said that dissociation and denial are two sides of the same coin. Dissociation is a function of denial, while denial is the means to maintain that dissociation. It's a defense mechanism like fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. It protected me. It allowed me, a severely traumatized person, to go to school and work. And that's extremely important because that's part of our survival toolkit. And as I said, the role of denial in DID is undeniable. I know, sorry guys. It kept in place the structure of my system even though I did not know I had a system at the time. So like I said, dissociation is like a form of flight, and denial is the airplane, the means for that flight. And you flee so you don't have to remember things, period. And that is denial. I suffer from severe denial with this disorder. Like I said in my previous video, I was diagnosed with DID 3 times by 3 separate doctors on 3 separate occasions. I trusted each one of those doctors, but I did not trust that diagnosis. I would not accept it. And it's because I did not know that denial is a symptom of dissociative identity disorder. It's not as simple as, no, I don't believe that. It's an unconscious architecture of how your brain functions. So when I was very young, before the age of 7, I suffered severe traumas. I cannot remember a lot of them, but I do remember some. So my brain learned that when you are faced with an unbearable moment, just dissociate, create a new part, have them deal with it. And since that happened when I was very young, my brain still does that to this day. So let's say I have a trauma now. I might have a split and a new persona could develop. Here's the problem with denial and denying your disorder. Sometimes they have skills and life-saving mechanisms because it is a defense mechanism. So if you ignore your alters long enough and strenuously enough like I did, they could go dormant. And if they go dormant, you do not have access to whatever gifts they have. You may not, for instance, here's my example. Throughout my life, I've been interested in a lot of things to the point where it gets chaotic. I can't pick. I've had trouble choosing. I've had trouble choosing my whole life. With books, for instance, I can't choose books. I bring 10 books with me everywhere. I didn't know why. I just thought I might not be in the mood for that book. I better have 5 others, I didn't know that maybe I had alters who had different interests and maybe those were their books. Yes, some of them were their books. I just thought I need a lot of books because I'm studying and I apologize. I'm still looking at my little script. I didn't make a script, I made an outline. Here. Woo, my outline because I wanted to be educational and seem all hoity-toity educational, but I'm clearly not on that in that frame of mind today. Let's try this again. Had I known that denial was a symptom, and let me explain something here. What you're currently seeing in this video, my inability to say my sentences, and I have an alter who is very close. Her name is Red, and I describe her this way since I discovered her a couple months ago. She's always in the chamber, okay? Like if you had a gun and there was a bullet in the chamber, it's separate from the other bullet. It's like she's always there ready to pop off, like at any agitation. And she has a particular disliking for making videos. And so she often makes every step of the video making process miserable for me. And I understand she definitely has a logical purpose in my life, as all alters do. Just know that if you have parts, they have a logical purpose in your life, regardless of how they manifest that purpose. For instance, Red is extraordinarily angry, and everything, like every time I encounter her, she's rageful, and she's always trying to make me stop doing that. Don't, like, she causes great anxiety in me, and she causes anger that I can't control. And so I've had moments when making these videos, like the first video, and I assume I'm gonna have more trouble, but this time it's on camera. Last time I had difficulty after I filmed and editing and stuff like that. So like if any little thing happened, she would be like, oh, forget it, and like be ready to throw the computer, for instance. And so she's near, and she's in the chamber. And so at any moment she can interrupt me or interrupt my flow of thoughts, or, little things that might make it difficult for me to finish this video in a holistic manner. So let us continue with my little script. Okay, here we go. If you suspect you have DID, please do not suppress your alters. Nothing positive comes from that. Often they will manifest in different ways in your life if you try to suppress them, or they'll just take over completely in order to get done the thing they need to get done. This does not mean that you have to do everything they want, but you do have to respect their desires and wishes and their opinions and acknowledge them. And I've been doing that a lot lately, and that's very foreign for me because I've always been I don't take care of myself, okay? I take care of other people. I would much rather take care of another person than worry about my own problems, actually. And so here we go. So I suppressed my alters for so long that the talents I had my entire life started going away. I was in school for English, poetry in particular. I started publishing professionally at the age of 20 poems I had written in my teens. I was published alongside my professors. I was an award-winning poet. I was on my way to graduate school for poetry. At some point, I couldn't write anymore. It just went away, like it was gone. I used to have like a river of words and images that would just flow through my head like water. And then one day, it started getting spotty. Like I would have a harder time accessing my talent or my creative mind. And then it would get more spotty, and then the distances between the time I could write and couldn't write got longer. And then eventually I couldn't write at all. And I haven't really written in over a decade because of that. And that was the second thing that shut down in my system. The first was art. I used to do a lot of painting, drawing, all kinds. I could draw anything, paint anything. And that was the first talent that went away. That actually went away in my late 20s, which is when like my mid to late 20s, I guess, is when I learned that I had the disorder but did not agree. I lost my ability to do art. I lost my ability to write poetry. And then I was doing stand-up comedy because I love stand-up and I was pretty good at it. I wouldn't say I was a savant. Like in poetry, I was pretty much a savant. But comedy, I did pretty well. I did it pretty well and I loved it. And then I just couldn't perform anymore. I became very afraid to go on stage, nervous, didn't feel myself. Felt like if I went on stage, I wouldn't be funny. I didn't have the right energy, the right feelings. And that's probably because it wasn't probably an alter, obviously. And I didn't know those things at the time because of my powerful denial. Your brain will put a lot of things in place to prevent you from knowing certain things if it's protecting you. And if you feel that you have alters and you feel like you behave in ways that baffle you and yet you can't rein it in, you cannot get your hands back, you cannot get your body to stop moving or your mouth to stop talking. Yes, you might have DID, and do not doubt those experiences. Go talk to a professional about them. Learn about them. Learn from me, a cautionary tale. Someone who got to the age of 42. Yes, I'm 42. Old. I'm a crone. Anyway, and I didn't know. DID has been called a disorder of non-realization. It is something it's very hard to realize you have DID sometimes. In some people, they might know from childhood. I got all the way to my 40s because I was so fearful of being out of control. I was fearful of being considered crazy or non-credible. Credibility has always been a very strong point for me. Okay. And just like that, I've lost my train of thought. here we go again. Non-realization. It's a syndrome of non-realization, and non-realization can happen to anybody, and like everything, it's on a spectrum. DID is an extremity of that spectrum. Realization requires making connections between our world and our sense of self, and changing ourselves and our worlds as a result. That is from the haunted self, okay? This process is interrupted in DID because of the amnesic barriers that you build due to trauma. You don't have a consistent sense of self, and that's something I've dealt with my whole life, even before I knew I had DID. I just always felt like this didn't feel like quite me. I can't quite, like with art, I couldn't come up with a cohesive style, so I gave up. I just could not come up with something that looked like it went together. Okay, here's the last thing, the last two things I was gonna say in the video. The problem with non-realization is it can be reinforced by outside environmental factors. It can be reinforced. So like, let's say you are in an environment with your family and one of your family members was a perpetrator. That person has a vested interest in keeping the dissociation and the denial in place to protect themselves. And sometimes the family does too, in order to keep the family structure in place. It's very hard for people with DID to realize they have DID, because not only does their brain automatically say to them, nope, that didn't happen to you, and it certainly didn't happen, period. And so it's sort of like a feedback loop for me. I would be severely traumatized if I had DID, so I don't have DID, therefore I don't have trauma, and vice versa. Okay, and so that can happen to all of us, and I could fall back into denial of this disorder at any time. Honestly. Next week, let's say I don't have any contact with my alters for a week. My brain might say, you know, you made that all up, right? Like, you made that up. That's not a real thing, okay? Just so you know, girl, we got this, you made this up. That could happen to me at any time, and it can happen to anybody with DID. So when those thoughts are in your head, they're perfectly natural, they're part of the disorder. Acknowledge them, and maybe just try to remind yourself that you're not making it up. Please don't fall into the trap I fell into. I could have had years of productive work as a poet, honestly, and I might in the future, because now I'm starting to get that back because I've been open-minded to the parts I've discovered. And they are very tentative with me. They're not necessarily excited about me knowing everything. I have a lot of parts who think I should not know about this. I should not know I have DID. Other parts think I should, otherwise I wouldn't know. Just know that that can happen, and I hope you are all good, and thank you all for whoever watched this video. In the first video, I'm so thrilled that anybody watched it all, and to those who did, thank you, and I appreciate it, and you are good people. I'm so glad you're on this journey with me. Stay safe and be well.